So typically we have a rule of not supporting any individual team on the podcast.
What is that? Who made that? I didn't say that rule. If you're watching on YouTube, I have my Indiana University shirt on because I was
like, the hater blowback. We just got too many phone calls and letters in the past.
Well, as I explained to Sten earlier, when your team's only good once every 30 years, you're going to
ride that wave.
So I wear this like every day. So anyway, go Hoosiers for at least 2 more weeks until reality strikes. So, so today we're going to talk about a big idea, which we are really big on having foundational beliefs that some things like it has to matter on Monday. We're way more on the practical side than we are on the just mindset. But one of the most practical things we talk about is that you should have a system in place for financial planning, and that most of the advisors we talk to just don't have a system. They're really sort of flying blind and sort of feeling in the dark versus having a track to follow. So today, Sten's going to break down our system, our methodology, the track that you can follow in order to, as simply as possible, understand and implement paid financial planning. So literally, if this is the only episode you ever listen to, this would be the most important one, I think.
Yeah. Financial planning obviously was really important in my progression as an advisor. It's changed my practice. We talk about it a lot. I get excited about it, the potential of it. Been through a lot of head trash from it. So love to help advisors say, hey, I know where you are now, but here's where you can go. Mm-hmm. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was an executive in the tech space. And I really enjoyed the podcast because they were sharing things with me that there's no way I could have known, because they're in the middle of it all the time. Mm-hmm. And they're talking to people that I would never have access to, that are in government, that are, the new startups that are inventing new things. And so what I want to be, as I talk to more advisors, is we get to work with some of the biggest firms. We talk to the leadership of those firms. We have a pretty good idea of what they're thinking about and what they're trying to accomplish. Yeah. Where when I go back in time, when I was just an advisor day to day, that's all I thought about. I want to build my practice. I want to build my team. I want to increase my revenue. I want to serve my clients really well. And we want to help advisors do that. But I also want to give you a peek into what's going on in the industry. And so you can benchmark yourself and say, I'm aware and on track with where things are going because things are always changing. Or is there a chance I'm behind and I'm going to be playing catch up later? Yeah. One of the biggest things right now in our business is financial planning. Every big firm you can think of right now has a team of people trying to figure out, how do we help our advisors understand their value, communicate their value, and get paid well for it? Because gone are the days of, let's just sell products as quick as possible, because the consumers are onto that in a way. The consumers are realizing, I just want good ideas and advice. My financial plan is not going to be a collection of products I've bought over time. Insurance is not always the answer. Annuity is not always the answer. Putting money in the S&P 500 is not always the answer. Is that the future advisor is going to bring a much more calm, holistic approach. But the good news is you don't have to give that all for free anymore in the hope of selling a product again, is that you can have a great revenue and profit and still manage money if you're great at it, still sell insurance if you want to do that. But that this can be a pillar of your practice moving forward. That is coming. It is already here. And so we get a lot of questions from advisors on like, okay, how do I do that? Because it is new. It is different from what most of us were taught. And you have to go through this change cycle in order to fully adopt it. And the good news, because we've done it with hundreds, maybe thousands of advisors now, is if you commit to it, you'll come out the other end and you will say, and I've said to myself, I can't believe I used to do it the other way. Mm-hmm. So the question we get, and we want to help you with it today, is what does that process and progression look like?
Right. And as with all things that result in a positive outcome, it starts with your identity. It starts with how you view yourself, how you talk about yourself. And this is an easy one to skip over and people just go, tell me what to do. But the reality is, if you don't view yourself in a certain way, you won't act in a certain way. So Sten, talk to us about what we teach on a really practical level about how advisors identify themselves.
For my story, I was a product of what I was taught, which I hold a lot of grace for myself. I got into a business that I didn't fully understand what it looked like to be a financial advisor day to day. I didn't really understand what qualifications I needed. And so I walked in blindly with a lot of excitement and energy and started learning from the people I was around. At times, the people I ended up around were people that I wanted to be like, and so that I lucked out. Mm-hmm. And other times, I started copying people that I eventually realized I don't want a business like theirs. And sometimes that was time wasted that I'll never get back. So I think we can learn from doing things the right way from people that have kind of blazed the trail and we see the results. And at times we can learn by saying, oh, I'm trying that, but actually I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm learning from people on what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the head trash and what I learned was get really good at selling stuff. And as you get really good at being convincing and selling stuff, identifying a problem and coming to them with a product, you're going to learn more about the product as you go. In hindsight, I was like, man, I should have known that product really, really well up front and then worked on selling it better to the people that really needed it.
Yeah.
The industry did not say, hey, Sten, go practice on people and make mistakes and sell them stuff they don't need. It wasn't like nefarious, but the lack of professionalism around this is important. You can really have a big impact on people's lives. Your personal income and trips should not be the main measure of your success.
Yeah.
Was something I had to find out as I went when I had like, oh, it's kind of an icky feeling. Oh, maybe I don't want to be that type of advisor. So we talk a lot about there's really not a great accepted, clear, elite path in our business.
Mm-hmm.
But when I finally ran into an advisor that challenged my way of thinking by saying, I get paid a fee because apart from the product, I am worth it. Meaning your ability to coach somebody, keep them accountable, help drive them to results, and give them factual planning ideas is worth something.
Right.
That shocked me.
Yeah.
Because that flew in the face of everything I'd been taught.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I remember when I moved here that I found this path to a town I visited often that I'd never known. And it was more beautiful and it took a little bit less time. And I thought, I just wish someone would have told me that path existed and I wouldn't have been on the boring path that a vast majority of people were on. And I love that story as it relates to advisors because it's like, they would take it. They just don't know. Right. It's not. Yeah. And a lot of times people think, will that work? And what we do know is that it does work because it works with hundreds of advisors that we've coached. Talk about also the identity, the simple, and then move on to the next one, the simple identity of answering the question, what do you do? And how many advisors struggle with that? Because that's something that when you get that dialed in, when you say, this is who I am and this is what I do, it literally can change everything about your business in a positive way.
Yeah, I think most of us don't answer that question well. We know that. Again, this is kind of to our level of awareness because we've asked thousands of advisors that question, many of them live, and we have yet to this day to get a great answer. We will hear things like, I help you realize your retirement dreams or retire with confidence, or it's like nobody's going to say that stuff's bad. But for a busy consumer that has a lot going on in their life, you pretty much just told me nothing.
Yeah, and is it effective? I mean, what do you do? And you're great about teaching this. Is the answer to that question should either disqualify them. Oh, okay, I'm not the right person for you, or say, oh, I know someone like that. I know someone that you could help, or say, oh, that's me. I want to work with you. Instead, it's just okay, and that's not going to grow your business or help your brand. Yeah. And that's most people's answers to what do? You get back, okay.
What I know, and these are truths that we can say very confidently now, it would be very hard for people to debate because we have data on it, is as you listen to this podcast, I would bet you do not have an amazing answer to that question. I will also say you undervalue yourself. And if you are not currently charging for financial planning, your advice or your time, or proactively pursuing a path to implement it or partner with somebody else that offers it, you are already behind.
Mm-hmm.
If when I said those things, you felt something inside of you like defensiveness or maybe he's not right, that's what we call resistance. Like there's something inside of you that wants you to not change, to not be open-minded to something else. Because we know in our business, as you've been in the business long enough, there was a day where you bought and sold stocks, and that's how you made money.
Mm-hmm.
Those days are mostly gone. There was a day where we had just all sold mutual funds and got paid commissions. Those days are gone. So if you were living in a bubble of, I get to keep doing what I'm doing now forever and I'll be successful, unless you're already making enough money to be comfortable and that's your whole goal, that's fine. You need to be adapting and growing and changing. And the best change, the best investment you can make in yourself and your business is learning to understand your value and communicate it and get paid for it. And I will be on that hill and we'll be screaming this for a long time because most advisors and firms are slow to adopt. And if you can be doing it now, you're at least 5 years ahead of everybody else.
So the next stage of this is now that you have a different identity and it's not just about a product or gathering AUM, It's the concept that you have ideas, you have knowledge that is valuable, that sometimes does lead to a product placement or AUM, but that you are a curator of great ideas. I think advisors that I talk to want to believe this about themselves, but they just don't know how to do it. So if you can combine sort of the next two parts of the path to paid financial planning of ideas and idea partners.
This was one of probably the biggest head trash points for me in this process was I don't know what those are. No one's trained me for what those are. I can tell you about product. And so it was the current version of Sten as an advisor fighting the newness until I just succumb to it and say, okay, I'm going to be better at this. At the very core, and if you're listening now and you're an advisor, you are doing this whether you know it or not. You are learning, and when you sit with somebody, you are sharing that information generously with them to some degree or another. It may seem like simple stuff to you, but it's, hey, fund your HSA. It's a triple tax benefit. Hey, what are the 3 buckets? Like, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking ideas that no one else in the world knows.
Right.
So you know more than you know. So that's the first thing I want to give you is like, you are farther ahead in this idea world than you think you are. The other is, how do I become a student of the game to where ideas come to me? Because what I know now is that I'm one idea away from 10 new clients that are super excited that I add a lot of value to right away. And so what we teach and coach on is idea partners. What the industry has called centers of influence forever that we look to for referrals. We now say, no, those are experts in their field that you're going to get their best ideas. So is this a business attorney? Is this a real estate attorney? Is this a tax attorney? Is this a realtor? Is this a CPA of some kind? Who are the people that you build out proactively as your network that you can tap into? And now, when I meet with a CPA, I don't say, hi, I'm Sten. Can you send me business? And we all laugh when I say that because we've all done it and probably not had great results. Now I say, what are the best 3 ideas you're using with your clients? Because now, instead of having the success of my firm sit on this accountant who is really busy and probably distracted, I now took their ideas and I'm back in the driver's seat and I get to use those to go get business and add value to people. And so the core of it is you don't have to get a PhD in every level, but just realize now that you are a curator of great ideas. You are always curious. For people in our community, we share all those ideas. So that's a way to supercharge it. It's like, you want them? Here they are. Now let's get really good at communicating it. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of head trash around the ideas. It kind of freaks us out, but it's a lot less intimidating than it sounds. It's just you stepping into it, realizing, okay, I need to view my business a little bit differently.
I love how you said, first of all, you know a lot of ideas already. You just aren't necessarily seeing the value of them. Mm-hmm. And second, if you don't have ideas, you have other resources you can go, and they don't have to be ninja, triple backflip, meaning they can just be simple ideas that you haven't heard about. It could be implemented easily. I had a 15-minute conversation yesterday with an advisor, a brand new advisor, and I talked about the Augusta rule with them. And they're like, I have no idea what that is. And I said, no problem. I can explain it to you in 60 seconds. And then I said, could you see yourself talking with the business owner to tell them about that and then charging a fee? And 5 minutes before, they were like, I don't know what that is. Yeah. So suddenly they're like, yeah, I could see how I could add $100,000 of non-taxed income to the next person I meet. So what was the value of that idea? How many financial plans could that advisor now sell? Not just because of that one idea, but because they have 10 ideas like that. And that's a pretty simple idea. And so I love the progression of don't discount your own ideas. Here's where to go get more. And the next step you talked about a little bit, and I want you to talk about now you have these ideas. And I think if there's one skill that every advisor could get better at and really is the key to victory, it's the next step in this path of paid financial planning, which is communication. So what do we teach that's unique in the market as it relates to communication? There's 2 things that I think that we stand on that are unique to us.
This is the area of our teaching where we see the most discomfort, kind of squirming, but yet the most excitement and immediate results. That in a matter of an hour, you take an advisor who's been in the business for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and they've done something they think works well enough. You introduce them to something new. They resist it, get uncomfortable with it. We force them to practice it. I show them how I do it. And an hour or 2 later, they're never the same. Mm-hmm. For me, it's partly, I think the bar we're accepting when it comes to interacting with the clients is way too low. We are meeting expectations when somebody comes in, when we have a fact finder and we interrogate them and we push illustrations to them.
Yeah.
But that's somewhat accepted in our industry. And the good news is for a lot of us is we kind of know that's what our competition's doing too. The downside as this wave is starting to happen, because we're working with some really big firms talking about this, is it's not what it's going to be like in the future. Meaning the most successful advisors will not necessarily be the smartest, because remember, they have idea partners and they have experts behind them. They will be the best communicators. And so for me, my personal story was avoiding every speaking class in college. Didn't want to do any of that. The ones I was forced to do were awkward, uncomfortable, to being forced in my business, realizing instead of focusing on getting more plate appearances, which is what the industry says, 10, 3, 1, and if you want more, just call more people.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting a lot of opportunities as a 20-something-year-old advisor in Nashville where I didn't grow up. I just had to say, I need an 80 to 90% close rate. And if I can just close the right clients more. And so I said, what does that take? And I realized I had to have a dynamic experience. I had to win them over with my energy, my excitement, my communication. And that's where I moved into saying, okay, how do I whiteboard? Because I believe most people will nod their head as we speak. And most advisors understand what we're saying because this is the world we live in, but there's some gap. We're missing it to some degree when it comes to understanding and urgency. And so we spend a lot of time teaching firms and advisors, how do you communicate on a whiteboard, which requires you to stand up, which instantly increases the energy in the room.
Sure.
Instantly exceeds their expectation of like, wait, what's happening? Instantly puts you in a posture of being a coach and an advisor. And then when you learn to whiteboard well with excitement, so people think you love your job, we then say, how can you quantify the potential outcome of this so that somebody really knows how important is this decision?
Right. So when I talk to advisors, day in and day out, and we're teaching these whiteboarding things, and they talk about times they weren't able to close, 95% of the time, it's because they didn't quantify well enough. So when it comes to communication, the next part is closing. You've communicated. How do you close the deal? Everybody wants to know, how do I close the deal? But you can't close a bad deal. So you have to communicate well. You have to quantify well. But if you want to close well, it's because your price matches the value that you're showing in a way that, and I make the joke, if you can show someone you could save them $100,000 in taxes, you don't charge them $99,000 for that. Like they're not going, oh, I'll sit and make $1,000. No, and I had this conversation yesterday with that young advisor. And I said, if you could show someone $100,000 of tax-free income through the Augusta rule in the next 5 to 10 years, and you said that's going to cost you $8,000, is that a reasonable request? And the answer is yes. The only question the consumer might ask is, how can I do this more? Because I like the return, right? Like a good investment, how much more can I put in, right?
And the good news is a lot of times that idea is just one part of the plan.
Sure.
Like they're going to pay for a planning process where you're giving them more stuff. Once you have time, now that they're a client, you have time to research and come up with more ideas. But I firmly believe we have to show them something up front that helps overcome the trust gap or the skepticism on their part. If we're going to ask for a good fee, and most advisors finish a plan and at the end they deliver it and they're like, wow, that was worth 5 times what I charged.
Sure.
You may feel that often, but how do we reduce the frequency of that by learning to understand our true value up front and communicate it well enough so we actually get paid closer to what we're worth?
Yeah. And listen, there's a progression to this. We understand. We were sharing a story in our staff meeting yesterday about a member of our community that had charged for a planning fee. I think it ended up being $1,800 or $2,800, something like that. At first, we were very proud of them and our coaches were celebrating them, and that's great. But I heard about the plan and I thought, it's probably a $6,000 or $7,000 plan, right? But they'll get there. But the beauty is, if it was $1,800, that's $1,800 more than they ever charged before, right? Yeah. And that is very, very real. Another advisor we have in our community, they just kept raising their rate from $1,000, now they're up to $4,000 as a minimum. And he's like, people just don't say no. And I asked him, what's the minimum amount you quantify for? He says, it's always 30, 40K at a minimum. Okay, well, that's why the price justifies, the cost. And so the next part of this is, I think, another huge missing piece in the industry that you've just been impatient enough to solve the problem. That's a compliment, by the way.
Thank you.
Healthy impatience. Because, we, in researching the tool in your latest book, I talked to personally probably 50 advisors, and I just talked to them about, what do you put in front of people? And it was a fascinating section of approaches, all the way from I just tell them a price to a 90-page e-money report.
Yeah.
So you solve that problem, the paperwork problem. Literally, what are they buying?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of schools of thought on this. We'll talk about kind of what was average, what I learned from the industry, and the financial plan on industry standards at this point is a large cash flow report, a bunch of printouts, and you give somebody 80 to 90 pages. That data is important, and we still run all that data, but it really is what fills my file that then justifies what I should put in front of them, which we use the term here. It's a financial plan that you understand. Mm-hmm. Because I think we just say this, a confused mind says no. So we don't want to overwhelm somebody. That's on one side where we just dump a bunch of documentation on. On the other spectrum, there's people that love living on this side, is like the one-page financial plan. That's hard to do, like to consolidate it all the way down. If you can do that well and somebody feels served, I'm all for it. As I navigated that, where I started on the far right with overwhelming people, because that was what the tools gave me, to then saying, hey, maybe I should write an executive summary. Like maybe I should boil this down a little bit more to like practical steps. Mm-hmm. I found my way closer to the one-page financial plan, which then I was like, man, these people are paying me $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. If I was in their shoes, I would expect something a little, with a little more meat and a little more substance to it versus, here's a one-pager, thanks for your 10 grand, we're off.
Yeah.
And so where I found myself is what's super efficient, yet meaningful enough that I believe the consumer would say, this appears to match the fee I was charged in the promises you made. And that's where we built PlanScore. It's our software. And to where I can break a financial plan down into six categories and give you meaningful feedback and action items on each one of those. Mm-hmm. So I believe that I can do a really thorough job on a financial plan, and the deliverable could be 14 pages.
Yeah.
But still understandable.
And we have to believe that presentation matters.
Yeah.
Like it just what you put in front of someone, they have to, dare I say the word, enjoy looking through it. I mean, there is just a fundamental difference. You walk into I was making this comment about Publix the other day. Like when I go shop at Publix, I like feel good about myself. And when I go to like Kroger, I don't feel as good about myself. Like what's different? They both have the same food items, but there's just this feel you have in certain places of like, I like to shop here. I like to be here. And most people, when their proposals put in front of them, it doesn't feel good. It's not understandable. They need someone to translate it for them. And PlanScore makes it so it's just easier to sell planning because your ideas are communicated in a very simple way. And the consumer says, I understand where I am, where I could be, and what you're going to do to get me there. It's really that, but simple is hard. Making things simple and elegant, ask Apple, ask any company that is trying to simplify things.
Yeah, I mean, we've spent a year building a tool that on the surface, the hope is when people start using it in our community, they're like, wow, this is so intuitive and easy. And we're like, oh man, that was a bear.
Yeah.
But I think the lie I told myself and I believed was the paperwork I put in front of somebody to onboard them has to be the thing that compliance is asking for. Mm. And that's not true. Everything compliance needs, you will need to get, but it doesn't mean I have to use what compliance came up with, which their goal was not design necessarily. It was more compliance.
That's probably a word that's never been uttered in a compliance department.
Let's make this look really good.
About design today.
Let's take things off of this that aren't necessary. So you will get those forms still, but like it doesn't have to be the thing that you use to get them to say yes. And so I've been all up and down the spectrum of proposals to realizing like, I want every single page of my proposal to be so important and meaningful and setting expectations that I pause on it. And they ask questions on it.
That's a great point.
We went from a 15-page proposal down to a 2-page to like, no, I think we can do it in 4 to 5 pages. Yeah. And everything in there matters. And it helps with future objections. It helps avoid confusion. But I had a good friend who was a marketing savant. He's just a great, energetic guy. And he became a client. And I'm thankful he said, man, our first meetings were awesome. You were on the whiteboard. You were sharing great ideas. You were being generous. I pretty much thought you were my advisor before I paid you anything. But once I said yes, and then you gave me the proposal and the onboarding paperwork, the experience dropped off a cliff. It all of a sudden became like kind of bland and boring. And he was like, I want you to keep that from beginning to end. I want to feel like this is clean and elite and thought out. And so his challenge caused us to kind of reinvent that. Yeah. And again, we still have all the same reports in our compliance folder. All the data is there. I'm just being more intentional on what the client experience is.
Right.
because I don't want to get in the way of them saying yes.
Yeah.
How do I remove as many obstacles to that as possible?
So once you get people to say yes by putting a good proposal and a plan in front of them, even the plan they understand, right? Then you have to provide the service. And we won't dive into that a lot, but just know that we have a plan, and we show people this at our How to Charge Live event, and also in our community and it's fascinating because it's large companies that really want people to be doing financial planning, and yet we're working with these advisors who say, like, I can sell planning, but I literally don't know what I should be doing for them for the 12 months that I'm required to sort of serve them.
Yep.
And so we fill out a service calendar of what you're doing each and every month for them, and how does that fulfill your requirement with your company, but also not overwhelm you. You know, you're not mowing their grass every other week. You're also not, gone for 6 months. Right? How do you provide a level of service that matches an $8,000 planning fee, but also doesn't make you, their employee? And we've done this with so many different advisors. Whether you want to do a 3-month, a 6-month, or a 12-month service calendar, we help you build those. And so that's where we go from A to Z, from what is your identity to the ideas. How do you communicate those ideas? How do you present and quantify those ideas? How do you present a proposal and a plan? And then what service do you provide? So I think, Sten, you've done a great job today, really helping people understand from the beginning to the end, what does financial planning look like today and in the future? And the answer is it's as simple as it possibly can be, and also very thorough in its delivery. Mm-hmm. And it's a way for people to provide, I think, more service to their clients than ever before, and to profit from it at the same time, which is appropriate because you're providing more service.
Yep.
And frankly, our experience is advisors just like their job more. They like doing planning, where before they were scared off, like, man, I don't know if I want to get into all that.
Yep.
And what we've seen is those who haven't done it are excited about it. Those who thought about it, been in the business a while, it doesn't become a burden. It's a different challenge, but they really enjoy how involved they can be in the process. And then lastly is we've had advisors learn how to scale it, right? Which is where it is not more work. You might bring on a staff member or two to help scale that. And it's been worth it. What are your closing thoughts?
I mean, the success story of this is that you create a new revenue stream for your business on time that you're currently giving away for free. So you put some structure around it, you increase your mindset, your confidence, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm still doing almost the same stuff, just with some more intentionality. I'm getting paid for it now. Like, that's so refreshing as an advisor. And we've had advisors in business 30 years, multi-million-dollar producers, and they're like, I think all I needed was permission now to charge for everything I know. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm more valuable now than I've ever been, yet I'm still giving away for free in the hope of AUM or insurance. And so my challenge as you listen is, if you are not fully on board for this, if you haven't been like, Sten, Andy, dude, I've been with you guys, I've listened to you guys, like, I'm there, please sit in that. Because the frustrations of the future will be, why am I missing out on these clients? I'm fearful that if I charge for a fee, I'm going to miss out on the AUM or insurance. Like, all of that is not true. But I believed it at once, but I'm on the other side of it now, saying, like, I'm so glad I have a practice this way. And I could see doing this for a long, long time. Because no matter who I sit with, there's a way for me to add value and a way for me to make money. Where in the past, I was hoping this person wanted to buy something. And it took me a while to realize, like, this isn't very enjoyable. I don't feel very valuable. I feel like a salesperson more so than an advisor. And so that's what I want for all of you guys.
Thank you, Stan.
Thanks, brother.